Hello, everybody. Welcome to Show to Be with Mike G, the show of Sazerac 18, the show of Baylor, London, Noel Gallagher, Jake Bugg, David Bowie. It is an all-star cast or an all-star discussion here with the wonderful food writer slash whiskey enthusiast slash real estate guy, Tom Thornton. Tom has been a part of the Austin food scene, a part of the Austin booze scene, since it even started to percolate and become a scene in the first place. He's been all around the world. He has a life that is storybook perfect in a lot of ways, and he just facilitated yet another panel at South by Southwest Interactive South Bites just this week. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Tom Thornton.
I read the book.
Is it a good book?
It is a good book. Michael Lewis is the author.
No kidding.
He also wrote Moneyball.
No shit. I
Yeah,
know it's the
a number
same
of
guy.
other things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's written a lot of really good sort of books about business culture, but he's kind of like the Bill Simmons of business writers or something. He translates to like a broad audience.
Yeah.
And, well, he wrote. I want to say he wrote The Blind Side too.
No
actually.
kidding.
Yeah.
This dude has got an Academy Award written all over him.
So they've developed some big projects out of his stuff, but also Michael Lewis, hilarious trivia, married to MTV's Tabitha Soren.
Tabitha Soren.
So interesting dude.
I remember
man.
Tabitha Soren. I had a dream about Kurt Loder the other night, actually. A total nice dream, not a weird
He's still
dream.
around. He's like a film critic, right?
Yeah, and he looks the same. And I was like, it would be awesome if I could have Kurt Loder up here and just like interview Kurt Loder, because now I can maybe get him. No offense, but like maybe now I could. I think he's like actually working for Huffington Post, maybe and down the line.
So like to that point, I know we've like taken a long walk away from what you were talking about.
Doesn't
but
even matter.
What I've found out sort of by accident over the last 8 or 10 years, writing for a long time for free, and then all of a sudden it being an actual side job and things like that, is that a lot of people are totally willing to talk to you if you just ask, and you have a place to put it that somebody's going to see it, or they're flattered to be asked, things like that. But I can't believe the people I've been able to interview or chat with, at least via email, over the past 10 years, but a lot of times in person.
Can we talk about one specifically, which will totally translate into Lemmy and Bowie? Actually,
sure.
So you posted something, because I love Noel Gallagher. I love his haircut. I love how much of a fucking dick he is. He's just like terse, old man, curmudgeon, yet he's not even that old. But he's a stylish guy. He's a gentleman, even if he is a ragamuffin of a gentleman. But you posted something like Noel kind of paraphrasing, saying that, there's no longer going to be the Led Zeppelins. There's no longer going to be the Stones. And then Lemmy passes, which, in my opinion, maybe was the last rock star that just didn't give a shit, that worked in his own rhythm, right? Like by the march of the beat of his own drum kind of thing. And then David Bowie, who was obviously, there are no words to capture how much of an impact he had in music, but how much of an impact he also had across multiple decades in pop culture. Is he right now? I mean, we lost Lemmy, we lost David Bowie, and who's the fuck is left? Does Noel is he just a soothsayer? Like, does he just know these things are going to happen in the world? Like, how does that work?
It's funny that came out of a longer conversation we were having where he was touring as a solo artist for the first time and having I think more success than he was expecting.
Sure.
As a solo artist, where he can still play arenas in Asia and in Europe and in Australia. He's is more of like a theater guy in America now. But,
right.
But I think was expecting to go back to theaters everywhere
Mm-hmm.
and found that, he still had all this success. And so he was kind of mentoring the singer-songwriter Jake Bugg.
Oh,
who
yeah,
you might have
really?
heard of.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess he heard early demos of Jake Bugg. So Jake Bugg was opening for him. And I was like, so what's it like to talk to that guy? And that like his career, no matter how successful he gets, is going to be very different than yours just because of the year he lives in.
Right.
And he was saying like, yeah, he said it's weird because, he's young, he's very talented, but like he can't really make money off of like selling albums.
No.
And he's going to have to really tour. And, he said it blows Jake Bugg's mind when he's like, how did you get 770,000 people to go buy Be Here Now
right.
in the first 5 days or whatever?
Yeah.
And Noel's like, hey, that was like a combination of pop culture and being right at the zenith of CD sales and everything else. And he's like, yeah, that will not happen to you, no matter, even if you become like a stadium artist.
It wouldn't matter, yeah.
Just won't happen. It only
Yeah.
happens to, I guess, Adele and Taylor Swift now or something.
Sure.
But so anyway, so my theory throwing out to him, just because I have a number of musician friends in Austin, as I'm sure you do, and I was like, so I think being a musician now, even for the top 10% of musicians, a lot of it's like it's like a middle class gig again.
Right.
There's not a lot of like record company advances and hotel
and they
suites
take money
and
out of your
stuff.
merchandising and all of that.
Even people that are successful, I think, are living pretty modestly, or are just touring a lot to earn a really good living, rather because music is devalued. And Bowie's a good case study there because he sold all of his album rights, like, I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago.
No kidding.
And at the time, he actually said, the internet's going to make music so cheap that taking this money now is the smartest thing I could do.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
I think, he did it, and everyone was like, he's crazy. He just took like a flat $50 million payment in lieu of all future royalties, and sold his thing to like a trust fund, or a hedge fund, or some sort of
to
like
make it
trust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they were allowed to license it to commercials or whatever, and he was like, I'm taking the money.
Yeah.
So
that's brilliant,
dude.
Man.
He was right.
He's totally ahead of the time. Was this in the 80s or the 90s?
This was probably around 2000.
Oh, okay.
He had Bowie had like a fan club thing. It was like BowieNet, and he would put up unreleased tracks, and he would put up like live shows and things like that. And it was kind of like a dorky fan club, but like on the internet. And he was one of the first people to do that.
So he knew.
Yeah, he knew it was coming, and so I was lucky enough through that site to get tickets to see him a couple times in the early aughts when we lived in New York, and that was it wasn't his last tour, but it was second to the last tour.
Was that the record where he was working with Trent Reznor?
It was Heathen, I think.
Okay,
it was.
okay.
I don't think it was Trent Reznor. I think it was back to like Brian Eno and Tony Visconti and those guys.
Yeah.
But it was really cool because since he lived in downtown New York, he was gigging on the East Coast, but not really other places.
Mm.
So he played like 6 shows in less than a year in New York. And he would do like a fan club show, and then 2 months later another one, and 2 months later another one. And it was like moving he would play like in like Long Island, and then he'd play in the Bronx, and then he'd play, at Roseland or whatever.
Yeah.
But they were all like club or theater gigs and stuff. And so I got to catch I was able to get tickets to 2 of the 6 shows.
That's amazing.
And,
How was it?
They were awesome, man.
I can't imagine.
He played this wedding hall in the Bronx, Jimmy's Bronx Cafe. And so a buddy of mine who is a musician in New York, we went, and he was making jokes about, playing the wedding that Saturday, or, that you should order, a round of appetizers from the back bar, whatever.
Yeah.
And it was the equivalent of like a Lazona Rosa size room or something.
Yeah.
But he was so like bemused to just be playing in this, what was like a Puerto Rican dance hall where they did like salsa stuff on Saturday nights.
Wow.
And, somehow they found him this random room to play in. So
That's so amazing.
it was great.
I don't think it's a big surprise that we feel so close to him as listeners. There are a lot of people that, Lemmy, I don't think any of us ever felt close to Lemmy. We felt close to the ideology of Lemmy, right? But Lemmy self-admittedly, like, he wasn't a good dad. He wasn't really into his kids' lives very much, and only within the past 5 to 10 years from this Mark Maron interview with him that I was listening to, like, did he even make any kind of impact, you know? So it's like, it wasn't that about Lemmy, but David Bowie is a guy that we all wanted, like, we would want to hang out with. He just seemed like he was the guy, despite if he's dressed up in makeup or not, you know? But it's like he's still an accessible guy, and I think that's what hurts more.
I think, yeah, it was strange. I actually I posted this on social media today too. We were at my wife and I were at a show in New York right after we moved there, and I wasn't 100% sure who it was. It was some British rock thing, or it was, you know, I think I can't remember, but this girl that was next to my wife was like. And we were like, what's wrong with this lady? And she started tugging my wife's sleeve and was like, and so we look over, and David Bowie and Iman are standing about 4 seats down in the row of our like mezzanine that we're watching this show in, and they were like leaving an opera box. And so you know, a song started that they liked, so they just like hustled into the seats to stay for one more song.
Oh, that's amazing.
And everybody was kind of, you know, side-eyeing, like trying to look, but trying to be cool. And man, I mean, they really did look like deities. I mean, you know, his wife, of course, is so tall and striking, and he is as well with the, you know, he had the kind of the floppy hair then and everything. But man, they looked like $1 million, literally, because, you know, they were wearing, you know, high fashion and were dressed for a night on the town in New York. And you're like, you know,
fuck me. Yeah. It's like, I don't know how I'm ever going to amount to that fashion wise.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of those days when you're just happy that you live in New York. And, I mean, it was, there were a few moments like that when we lived there. There was one time I was leaving Carnegie Hall, and I went to hail a cab, and it pulled over, and I opened the door, and Lou Reed got out.
Oh, wow. Jesus.
And I mean, I guess it makes sense. It's Carnegie Hall, right?
Sure,
of course, he could be going to, you know, see a show or whatever, and Laurie Anderson was with him and everything. But I was like, oh, that's New York, man. I just shared, like, I just got into Lou Reed's cab.
Yeah,
you know, like, that was so,
you know, amazing.
Some good moments like that with some of those icons, you know.
It's amazing how accessible everybody really is, because we're all just people, but sometimes we're on these different stages and people are more revered, and it's so strange. And that actually, the strange thing is if you think about it, I had this conversation the other night with my friend who's in advertising, and it used to be where we would revere the performers, right? There was this different dynamic. So there's the stage dynamic, the people on stage, and then there's us, the people that are enjoying the performance. There's an implicit dynamic there. But something about technology and things being on a flat plane. Twitter is a good example of which I can tweet the president if I want. I don't have to go through any different layers, right?
Right.
Which is it's flat. It's completely flattened the way in which we can communicate. That now the audience views the performer on the same level now, despite the fact that they did not put 20 years into touring. They never did any roadie work. They never recorded demos. All these things that are really paramount to being a successful musician. And do you feel like maybe that's part of the reason where people don't buy music anymore, because they don't find that dynamic all that special? They think they can do it. You know? I know, and I'm trying not to be jaded about it, but that's...
I'm not really sure. I think we're just living in a much more fragmented age, and it's funny too, because it cuts in both directions. Because like the popular, you know, bands that are making a good living, or that are, you know, popular indie band or something. Still, if you go to a party with 20 people you don't know, maybe you find one other person that's heard of, you know, Hot Chip, or you know, Cut Copy, or whatever, whoever you want to bring out as an example. Maybe three or four people, maybe three or four people have heard of Vampire Weekend or something. Yeah. But if you go to a group of 35 or 40-year-old people, you know, a lot of them won't have even heard of things that are on the indie rock radio a lot or something. But the big things now are so much bigger. You know, I feel like something like Adele or something like Taylor Swift is like bigger than like Prince was in the 80s or something in some ways, because it was like
huge.
There were
massive.
When Prince and Madonna were popular, there were like 20 popular artists or something, and everyone was kind of spread out amongst them or something.
Yeah.
Now it's sort of like there are 5, and
no, it's a good point.
that are mega artists that every single person knows of, and then there are like 1,000 beneath them in these different stratas or something. So I don't know how music works, because on the one hand, I have an Apple Music subscription for $14.99 a month. And my 6 and 8-year-old daughters could go listen to anything they could ever care to hear, because they're on like a family account.
Yeah.
And so, they're into the Beatles right now.
Luckily, that just finally hit after all these years.
So, they can listen to the Beatles, and they can listen to their Katy Perry and whatever else. But, when they're teenagers, if somebody tells them about, whatever it is, if somebody tells them about Buddy Holly or about Pink Floyd or about Led Zeppelin, they all of a sudden they can just have all those records and listen to them in a week.
Seems a tad unfair, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, there's definitely not the I heard somebody talking about this on some media forum recently. They were like, they don't have to work as hard to get those things.
Right.
You don't have to save up $15 of your money from
buy
working a side job to buy or Houses of the Holy or whatever.
Yeah.
Where when I'm 40, and when I was in high school, I was like slowly amassing like the Led Zeppelin collection and slowly amassing like New Order and NXS and Cure and bands that I was into at the time. And like you'd get one at a time, and you'd wear it out for a month, and then you'd have enough money to get the $15 and get the next one.
Yeah.
And, you slowly build that collection.
And you have to focus on that record, right? Because you can't just have everything. Like, maybe this is the point you're getting at, but like you buy a CD, you're listening to that CD for weeks. So you actually start to appreciate it in a different way, because you start hearing these nuances, look at things as an album instead of just singles,
Right. And I mean, I felt like I bought a ton of CDs, and I did, but I mean, but I was probably buying 5 a month or something, you know, and I mean, it was a lot of money. And
yeah,
so,
that's a lot.
When you're young. So, I mean, you are focused on it, and you are listening to like the deep cuts, and you are, you're playing it 40 or 50 times. And in this era of streaming, I don't listen to anything that much anymore.
Really?
I don't think any of us do.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Or we go back to the stuff that we did listen to that way before.
Yes. I think the thing, too, is like physically having it on the shelf, versus having this theoretically infinite library.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm just stuck. I'm like, well, I don't know what I want to listen to, so I end up picking the same 10 things over and over again.
Yeah, because it's like it's just easier. Swimming away from shore, in a sense. It's like, I don't know where the next piece of land is, so I'm just going to keep swimming. I might die out here. But
it's weird, man.
Do you think that your daughters have the opposite problem, or rather, maybe it's kind of a similar problem, but that they've got access to everything, but to navigate the everything becomes problematic, and like maybe they listen to stuff that's just easier? You think they get tips from what you have listened to?
Well, I've tried to, knowing the fact that, they're not going to, want to dive into Lou Reed's catalog too deeply. Or
I don't know
like
that I want to dive
right,
into Lou Reed's catalog.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, what I did actually, we went kind of old guard with it, and I bought them a CD player.
Oh, cool.
That they have upstairs in our house for like about a year and a half ago. And I let them check CDs out from my library one at a time. And so they ask. And so, what they've actually started by asking is, what's really popular? What are like the really popular things? So we went and Googled it, and we looked up like the top 10 most popular artists. And so it was like the Beatles, Michael Jackson, Elton John. And they were like, well, can we listen to that? Like that's like the stuff that people like more than anything else. So we'd like to hear those things. And so I gave them like the Beatles Red Album, the 2 CDs of greatest hits, and so they listened to that for a few months, and then they were like, well, can we get another one now? And I said, but you can keep that one. Like you like it enough. And so then we did like Michael Jackson's greatest hits.
Yeah.
And so I think we're gonna do like either Elvis or ABBA next or something.
Man.
But just sort of slowly, give them some classics to work from, and then they'll, hopefully by the time they're 10 or 12, they'll be interested enough to want to, start diving deeper or something. But
that's so cool.
They're their own personalities, so who knows if I give them the next one and they never even put it in the player.
Yeah. Here's yes.
Right.
I don't know.
I've never been a big prog guy or a big metal guy, so they're not going to have that problem in my house.
I tell you what, like I often wonder for a young females, let's say, if you gave them Pantera's vulgar display of power, if they would just have an appalled look on their face listening to it. Because even I did when I listened to it.
I do occasionally put like the metal channel on as a joke in the car, and they always look at me like, "What is? Stop!
Are we gonna crash, Dad? Like what's going on?
Can we get back to Weekend now?
Yeah,
I
please,
really like
on.
Can't Feel My Face. Yeah.
So are you a Texan guy?
I am, yeah.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in San Antonio.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So
okay.
was born there and graduated from MacArthur High School there.
Oh, cool. What were you? I imagine you talk about the Cure, New Order, and stuff. You were big into music in high school.
I was, although what came to San Antonio was hair metal.
Hair
metal,
time. Yeah, right.
So I mean, I was into stuff like NXS and New Order and Depeche Mode and The Cure, but none of that ever came. None of that toured in San Antonio.
It's got to be a huge bummer.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's funny because there were occasional things where like the Beastie Boys or Nine Inch Nails or somebody would come through town to like a club show or something. But mostly everything was 18 and up, or it was playing in Houston or something. And so I didn't get to go to a lot of the alternative stuff in high school, but I did totally go see like ZZ Top and the Scorpions and the Cult and stuff like that.
Ah, man, the Cult.
So my parents were cool about in high school. That was still the era where it was reasonably, I guess, either it was safe or they didn't realize it was unsafe or something.
Yeah.
Where on if a show was on a Friday or Saturday night, they could drop us at the Spurs Arena at 6:30 and be like, have fun, and I'll be back at 10:30. So if the show's not over, you just have to walk outside at 10:25, and but it was fine. So cool. They would be cool about that. But then shows were like $14 back then too. So.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, all that stuff has changed.
You could work a few hours on a Saturday mowing lawns for your neighbors or something.
Yeah,
have enough to get Motley Crue tickets or whatever.
Would have been worth it too back in that time. Not now so much, but maybe back then. So did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have a younger brother who's actually still in San Antonio.
Oh, cool.
My parents have moved around a lot, but they're still in San Antonio as well.
What did they do in San Antonio?
Well, my dad actually was an RV dealer. He sold travel trailers.
Yeah.
And he manufactured them as well. So
really,
I worked a lot growing up on the RV lot on Saturdays and Sundays
to
make pocket money and to learn responsibility and all those things. So probably not a coincidence that now I do sales as my primary job for a living, because it's just sort of bored into my brain.
It happens. It's almost genetic in a way,
But my dad was, he was a super hard worker, which I've kind of rebelled against. I think I'm type A, and I work hard too, but I try to be super efficient because I like doing a lot of fun things.
Yeah.
And so we try and I try and blaze through the workday as best I can so that we can get to the fun stuff.
Makes perfect sense. I would do the same thing. And your mom, was she staying at home?
Yeah, she was staying at home. She went back and got her degree after my brother started high school. But so that was just like a different era of people. She I guess. She was a little bit younger than my dad. Well, no, she was. They were the same age, but he graduated school a year early, and so she left school because they were getting married. So, that
makes sense.
So I'm going to leave,
Yeah.
But she actually, and so here's the funny part. She actually wrote for the Dallas newspaper in high school and at the beginning of college, and was thinking about going into journalism. So
you are your parents, aren't you?
So now I am actually both of them. Yes.
Combined, a nice hybrid.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I don't know what I am. Sometimes I kind of think about that, but I suppose, my mom was a free-spirited San Franciscan, if that's the right word, and I get all that stuff from her, and then, my dad's a real business-centric dude, so I don't know, but it's nice to see how we kind of come along, and we're in this nice amalgam of our parents, right? So did you go to school when you got out of high school, did you go to college in San Antonio?
I did. Well, it was funny. I got out of school at kind of an earlier age. We had moved when I was in middle school. We had moved to Hawaii.
Oh, shit.
I think my dad was suffering some career burnout, and my parents needed to just kind of mend some fences and stuff like that. So we moved to Hawaii so that he could take some sabbatical from work, and he was still running things on the phone and on the fax machine and stuff. But We lived there for a couple of years, and I went to the public schools are terrible there. So I went to
Are they really?
Yeah, apparently. Well, there's a lot of like class issues and stuff like that there as well. But
beautiful though, right?
So I went to like a prep school thing for those couple of years, and when I came back, I had a bunch of extra credits, and so they kind of bumped me forward. So I graduated high school when I was like 16 and a half.
Jesus, really?
So,
back in San Antonio?
Yes. Yeah. And so my folks at the time essentially said, well, if you would like some help with college, you can either be in San Antonio for a year and a half, and then go to UT, because I got into UT and wanted to go to UT. Or you can go somewhere like small and conservative now. And so, of course, being, that age, I was like, small and conservative now. so I ended up going to Baylor, actually.
No kidding.
So,
you went to Baylor.
I went to Baylor, which actually was a good experience for me, and it was probably really the good call on their part to send me somewhere reasonably conservative, where essentially like drinking was the worst thing people did.
Yeah.
It was like,
not bad.
Well, yeah.
You weren't getting pregnant out there.
Yeah, people were certainly the moral sort of baseline was probably a lot higher, and so I think it was good in the sense that it kept me honest until a later age, I think, and so in retrospect, I think it was probably a good call.
Yeah. What'd you study at Baylor?
I did business and marketing and all that kind of stuff, and didn't really have a plan for what was going to come after that.
Yeah. But you finished up, I guess, probably in the tight 4-year plan?
Yeah, well, about 4.5. But then my last semester, I actually went to England, which was the start of that sort of fascination.
Wow. Studying abroad, I guess?
Yeah, well, I think that was Rick Linklater's fault, because I went with a girl I was dating at the time and saw Before Sunrise. We're both like, oh, man, we got to go to Europe. That's awesome.
We're in love, right?
Well, and so it was really funny. So I went to England and did an exchange and stuff, and then as soon as I came back, she went and did an exchange, and so of course we broke up because it was like a 8-month gap or whatever. But that movie totally led me to London, and then in retrospect to my wife and children, because I ended up going back to London for graduate school.
No kidding.
Which is where I met my wife. And
which school did you go to?
I went to London Business School.
Interesting.
So
how was the experience there?
It was awesome. I really went there because it's a great place, but it was a chance to live in London for 2 years.
Amazing.
And so I was, after college, I was here in Austin from 96 to 98 working at Texas Monthly.
Were you really? Were you writing? Were you doing copy?
No, I was doing business stuff there, like doing marketing and sales and things like that. But I got to know a lot of the writers, and it's funny because I've ended up writing for them a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. And a lot of the same people are still there. But it's funny. Some great writers there that started when I was there, like John Spong and Katie Vine, and some of these people just were getting kind of going there at the time, and so it was a really fun place to work. And then I left there to go to grad school, and so I was in London for a couple of years.
That's so cool.
And, it was
did it? When I think about like everything that I love about music, I think about Manchester, I think about Liverpool, and to go back into it, where it kind of started. Did you find yourself kind of immersed in everything you'd kind of grown up with?
Yeah, that was making up for lost time in a lot of ways, because
about whole 2021. No, because you were 2 years, so 22.
Well, yeah. So I was there. So I was in London the second half of 1995.
Oh, shit.
And then I was there fall of 98 to fall of 2000.
Okay.
So when I was there in 95, that was actually like kind of maybe 2 or 3 months after the absolute pinnacle of Britpop.
Yeah.
So everyone was on like their victory lap tours. I saw Oasis on the Morning Glory tour, and Blur on the Great Escape tour, and a lot of that. Didn't see Pulp, which I still regret.
Did you see Suede?
I have seen Suede a couple times. And so I have seen Suede, Supergrass, Charlatans, Paul Weller, all that kind of stuff. And so so I went nuts. And
I can't imagine, man.
I've always been someone who was totally fine with going to see things by myself. So I would always ask other people, and if nobody wanted to go with me, I'd just go by myself, because Paul Weller's playing at the Brixton Academy tonight. I'm going to go see that, And so it was just that kind of thing. But So I was going to stuff, every week and going to a lot of British comedy and or I remember in 95 actually seeing Eddie Izzard before he kind of blew up.
Wow.
I mean, he'd blown up in London. But he hadn't blown up globally.
It's an actor. He's like a respectable actor now.
Right. But I mean, there's a lot of that. I mean, there's just so much culture. And so I just was like, well, my time here is finite. I got to do it all.
Yeah.
And so I tried my best.
That's amazing. And so you end up luckily heading back in 98 then.
Yes.
Was it the same kind of experience then?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot more work to do that time because I was doing a master's, but at the same time, their structure was a lot more self-reliant, and their grading system is a lot more lenient, I think, than in the U.S.
Really?
It's like you go to these lectures. They only did lectures Monday to Thursday, so we had 3-day weekends. So you could peel out. You could take a 4:00 flight on Thursdays and go to Prague or go to Rome or something and take 3 days and come back early Monday morning in time for your class and stuff.
Amazing.
So it was rad.
What was business major there too?
Yeah, and I did that, essentially. I felt like I needed to go back to school some more, but I still wasn't necessarily sure what I was going to do next. And I kind of thought vaguely marketing and advertising, and that is what I ended up doing. I ended up going to Madison Avenue.
No kidding. Where you were a genuine madman.
Madman.
Sorry.
There were not bars in the offices and things like that.
That is a shame. A huge shame, actually.
But it was interesting, man. So yeah, it worked.
But you said to go back real quick. You said you met your wife at the business school in London?
I did actually. She it was funny. We would. I mean, there was a huge gender disparity there because, MBA program, 15, 16 years ago, it was like 1/4 women, 3/4 guys.
Wow.
So, it skews older and stuff, but, I'm sure it's a lot closer to parity now, but it certainly wasn't then. Mm-hmm. So it was actually funny. There were not a lot of women around, and so when you would meet somebody, you would really meet them. You're like, oh hey, But so
I knew you existed.
Yeah. So, but my wife was actually the younger sister of one of my classmates, and she was on an undergraduate exchange. Mm-hmm. But since I was kind of young, we're only 2 years apart. So she was finished in her last semester of undergrad, and I was in grad school, but we're only 2 years in age difference. So we kind of fell in pretty quickly, and
amazing.
And so we've been married 12 years.
That's incredible. So what took you to did you want to work in Madison Avenue? Was that what you had thought about?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I had all these ideas that, you could go and run a branding campaign for Sony and, do all these things.
Yeah,
and I mean,
Sony.
I did work on a lot of those things. I mean, I worked for, Dannon and Sony and I'm trying to think, the PGA Tour.
Oh, wow.
And Lipton Tea and all these different things, and
lifestyle brands,
Singular, and whatever else, So
Singular, that brings back some memories. Jesus.
But so I mean, I did all that stuff, but I didn't realize that you needed 42 layers of signatures, and that everything was sort of groupthink, and it just I never totally found my groove. The closest I came to finding a niche was research and long-term planning for brands and doing research on brands and figuring out how people felt about them, and then trying to advise them on well, here's how you should shift over 5 years so that people like you more and people trust you more.
When did you head out to New York?
2000.
Okay, so you were there for all the shit going down.
Yes, we were there. Yeah, we were there for 9/11.
Yeah,
and still, it's a testament to her character that my wife has never really made fun of me or judged me for the fact that on 9/11 I was at Midtown, and she was at our apartment, which was 9/10 of a mile from Ground Zero.
Wow.
And so she heard on the morning TV news that the first plane hit the tower, and so she called me at work, and I was going into a meeting. She's like, hey, it's my first day of school. I was about to go to she was going to grad school in North Jersey at the time. She's like, I was about to go to Port Authority and catch the commuter train out. But World Trade Center, had a plane fly into it. Do you think that could be terrorism, or is that should I stay home or something? And I was like, nah, that sounds crazy. That's just an accident. Go ahead and go. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't want you to miss your first day of graduate school.
Sure.
And so, so then essentially she gets on the train, or actually she takes our laundry over across the street, and the second plane hits, and she doesn't see it, even though it's actually in the sight line. She just doesn't look south.
Holy shit.
And goes directly down into the subway, and, about 34th Street or something, they're like, sorry, everybody, get out. And, we can't really talk to you about it, but everything's shut. And so she ended up walking to my office, not really knowing what was going on, except for that there was some terrorism or something. And she got me, and we walked home. And it was really weird because we were walking against the flow of all the people leaving downtown, because we were going back to our place,
right, which is closer to what was going
on 6th Avenue in Houston, and Ground Zero was just it was a mile south, and so everyone was walking toward us, and people were huddled around cabs, and the cabs had their radios up at top volume. Yeah. We're talking about what was going on, and I remember having to tell her on the walk back that, like, the Pentagon got hit, and that there was another plane that crashed, and we just had no idea what was going on. So I remember I had put her in the apartment, and then I ran to the grocery store, which was miraculously still open. Got really? Like 3 days worth of stuff, and gallon of milk, and whatever, some deli meat, some bread and stuff,
handle of bourbon,
just right, just knuckled it, so a 6-pack of beer or whatever I got, and we just went home and kind of kept the TV on, and we're huddled in for about 48 hours, just kind of waiting to see what would happen next. And, it was strange. So
it is strange.
It was a weird time, but
how long were you at the agency?
I worked different places there for about 5 years. But it's funny just finishing that real quick. That fall was really interesting because at the time, I guess, Bush was saying, like, get out, do things, shop, and all that.
Right.
And you could really see it in New York because we had tickets to a billion things that fall. Uh-huh. And we started going out again about 2 weeks later and I remember going to see, like, a Wilco show, going to, like, a play or something.
The consummate hipster, Tom. You've seen all the incredible bands, right?
But it was like you would go and it'd be a sold out show and only 60% of the people would be there.
Really?
Because everyone was afraid to congregate in a large space.
Oh, I see.
So it was really weird. It was sporting events, everything. Everyone was like really, just calling in sick and not going. And so it took about 3 months for everything, for attendance to get back to actually like full levels and stuff.
That's something I never thought about. I never heard that aspect of it. The people, they'll buy the ticket, but very reticent to go.
I think they were just scared.
Yeah.
And, I remember going to a lot of things and just seeing hundreds of empty seats. It's something that I knew was really popular.
Yeah. Wow. It's a different time. Completely. Totally different. So was Austin the next journey? Is that where you hit, or did you guys move again?
No, we didn't. In 2005, we decided that we weren't going to stay in New York forever. Mm-hmm. Wanted to have kids. Yeah. But kind of thought, we can't live in a 1-bedroom apartment forever. So we sold our apartment, and the real estate market did us a lot of favors that year.
Yeah.
And so we quit our jobs, and we actually went around the world for about 4.5 months before we moved
really?
here. Yeah.
When does the story get bad, Tom?
It's a pretty good story.
It's a pretty good. It's like scenic, picturesque. You're traveling the world.
I'm very lucky. Very lucky.
Where do you recall a specific? Give me a couple of the places you guys went.
Well, we put a couple of bucket list things in there. We had always wanted to go to the Toronto Film Festival.
Oh,
so we did that. Yeah. We actually started there.
Do you see anything you can remember?
Yeah, actually, it was a murderer's row of stuff that year. We saw the premiere of Brokeback Mountain.
Oh,
and we
sat
like a couple of rows behind like the Gillen, like Jake and Maggie Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger and all those guys. And we actually saw Capote, and so we saw Philip Seymour Hoffman
for that,
and we, what else? Walk the Line, Corpse Bride, all
That's
kinds
an amazing
of cool stuff.
year, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a good year. But so we got to see a lot of stuff like that, and so we did that. We did Oktoberfest in Munich, which was awesome.
Jesus, man.
Another
bucket list thing?
Another bucket list thing.
Yeah.
Yes, lots of liters of beer and ginormous turkey legs and
Yeah.
stuff. And since we had lived in Europe for 2 years, we didn't do a lot of that. We did a lot of Asia. We did a lot of Australia, New Zealand.
Love Asia.
And so we did, South Korea. We did Japan. We did Vietnam, Singapore, Cambodia. Just trying to. We knew once we had kids, we weren't going to go to those places.
Yeah, totally soaked it up.
So it was good.
So do you remember the moment we were like, okay, tour's over, everybody?
Well, what's funny about that is we did that right before smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess really iPhones came out in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So we were still in the end of 2005. It was still like we were totally disconnected unless we were at an internet cafe.
Mm-hmm.
We had like a global phone, but it was like $5 a minute to use. So like you'd never used it. You buy those like cheap phone cards that you call on the phone booth and stuff, and you call your friends or whatever. And so we were really disconnected. And my wife says, I could do that trip for like 6 months now with Facebook. But like, she was like, I was so lonely toward the end. And she said, it's like, it was nothing to do with you, but it was just like, I had talked to one person for like, 95 days. And she was like, I just needed like to go have a happy hour or two with like my teacher friends or something.
That's an amazing point.
Because after a certain point, I mean, it's like we had a great time, and I think.
But who do you know? I mean, you just meet people randomly, but that's not long-term relationships,
Right? Yeah, you'd occasionally meet people you talk to in a bar for an hour or two and stuff. But yeah, I mean, we were on the move pretty much, so yeah, it was weird. So she was really done at the end of it, and I was done the last couple of weeks, but I think she was done before I was.
And you said it's about 4.5 months?
Yeah, it was about 4.5 months.
God, I do not envy you.
So yeah, it was fun. And then we came here with kind of no big plan. I was going to work with my dad for a while and then figure it out. And
here being Texas?
Here being Texas. And Beth
and your dad was still in San Antonio?
Yeah, he was still there. And he was trying to kind of, in theory, he was going to wind up his businesses, but it didn't work out that way. But I should back up a little. I had been writing a little bit in New York. Mm-hmm. Not a lot, but I saw a writer call for Gothamist.
The Gothamist, yeah.
And
which was the parent company of Austinist, right?
Yeah, and so they were looking for writers, and it was a volunteer gig, but started writing about like the Knicks and like the Nets and a couple of random things like that for them. Mm-hmm. And then I got here, and we didn't know anyone, and so I sent Austinist a thing, and I was like, well, I wrote for Gothamist. Would you be interested in having someone write about, whatever, sports or film or whatever?
Yeah.
And so actually, I think it was Matthew Odom that emailed me back.
Oh, no
and
kidding.
Was like, yeah, dude, like we're gonna have a meeting at Club de Ville on Tuesday or whatever, and that was kind of where the writing thing started to happen.
That's so cool. And so you moved to Texas, but you didn't go back to San Antonio. You actually stayed in Austin.
Yeah, we've been here since beginning of 2006, I guess.
Oh, okay.
So.
It's a good time for the Austinist, if I recall.
It was a good time, yeah. I mean, nobody knew who we were, what we were doing for the first 2 years, but it was a really good bunch of people, and a lot of people who've gone on to do cool, important things in Austin over the last 10 years.
So did Paige write for Austinist?
Paige McGuire, yeah.
Did Lester write for Austinist?
I don't know Lester, I don't think. But
so who are some of the
So
notable...
Paige McGuire was great, one of our best folks, and really kind of piloted that music section for several years. Mm-hmm. And so she was around. Patrick Dentler was around, who's high up at C3 and one of the guys that runs Austin City Limits Music Festival right now. Trying to think, some of our photographers like Pune Ghana and Daniel Cavazos and Chad Wadsworth.
Yeah.
A lot of really great photographers, and actually Matt Wright from Wright Brothers Brew and Brew was one of our photographers.
No shit.
Yeah, he was. And
that's crazy.
Justin Cox, who works at public school. Yeah, he was one of our photo editors, and I mean, tons of really, really good people. And so, I mean, I'm leaving out like 20 people.
No, it's a big crew.
But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of great folks. And so I did film there for a while, but that was mostly Odom's beat. And then our other editor, Alan Chen, talked to me into. He was like, "You should do food, man. You know a lot about food. You should do that because we need more of that." And so. he and my wife talked me into that because she was like, dude, we have kids now. You can't go review Explosions in the Sky at 11 on Tuesday. That's
Wait, so when did you have because you have 2 daughters, right?
2 daughters, yeah.
When did you have your first daughter?
07.
07. So you'd been in Austin a little bit, writing a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. And so,
but that changes the whole deal,
yeah,
right?
mostly that happened after kids. But I mean, for the first 3 or 4 years, it was mostly just volunteer writing for Austinists,
Yeah.
and then other things started to come up where people would ask for help or things like that. I think the first big sort of break I got or whatever was American Songwriter magazine.
Cool.
Called and was like, hey, we have like a 2,000 word feature we need about Spoon, and our writer can't make it to Austin from Nashville. Can you go do this in like 18 hours? And
Wow.
I was like, sure, but I haven't heard that record because it's not out yet. And they were like, oh, well, we'll FedEx it to you and you'll have it like 2 hours before the interview.
Again, poor Tom.
Right. And so it was like really funny. So I went to interview Spoon at the Driscoll and ended up, talking with them for like an hour and writing a piece in that magazine. And that kind of like, spiraled to other things from there. But that was kind of where that went
all started
from. Yeah.
That's so cool, man. I imagine you've talked to, and I'm sure people ask you probably this question a lot, but I imagine you've talked to plenty of people in the film industry, in the music industry, food industry. Can you think of any of those situations that were particularly awkward?
Not terribly. I mean, I think a lot of times the access level is weird because I especially found the few times I did film things, they're trying to shepherd, 30 people through in an afternoon. And so a lot of times they'll put you with 4 other people. And I remember actually interviewing Will Ferrell one time.
Oh, no kidding.
And which I love Will Ferrell.
Yeah, me too.
And he came in and I was ready because I knew it was going to be 4 other journalists.
Yeah.
So I was ready with my question, which was, what do people yell at you on the street the most? And he was like, oh, well, and he stopped everybody else and he was like, let's make a top 10. And he went through and talked about all the things. And he was like, well, of course it was like, we're going streaking and Mom, more meatloaf. And, I'm Ron Burgundy and all these things. But he was, but I had my one question that I knew I could make an article out of.
Yeah,
it was like 10 things people yell at Will Ferrell on the street from cars, you know? And so you have to fight past that access level sometimes. So mostly people are great, man. Yeah. Sometimes what I find sometimes, especially with musicians, is if you call them, even if it's a scheduled time with their publicist, if you call and I remember one time I talked to Carl Newman from New Pornographers and love him and Nico Case and all those guys. And, I called and they were like just finishing a sound check and you could tell like people were asking him questions every 30 seconds. Right. And he was grumpy, but he wasn't grumpy at me. He was just like pulled in seven directions.
Sure.
And I thought at the end, wow, this guy hates me. And then I read the interview, and it was actually really fine. It was just he was so distracted, but he actually managed to give very thoughtful, articulate answers anyway.
Amazing.
The one I remember being openly hostile was Stephen Merritt from the Magnetic Fields.
Really?
That was probably the hardest interview I've ever done.
What was the point? Was he being, what's the word? Combative? Or?
He just wanted to argue about everything. And so I would say something about, that I thought he did this new production thing or something. He'd be like, no one's done anything new with production since the Jesus and Mary chain. There's just nothing new to do.
Jesus.
There was just, and apparently he just, that's just his demeanor. And that's why he doesn't tour a lot is he's just, he can't he's just kind of always creating and he doesn't really want other people's opinions and stuff. And so I don't know, apparently that was not a unique experience. But,
interesting.
I remember him being more challenging and maybe it's because I wasn't I know the Magnetic Fields, but I'm not like a student of their catalog.
Yeah,
or something.
me either. What 69 Love Songs? Is that the record?
Yeah, which is a great record. But I mean, most people are really nice and I think most times people are happy to chat with you. And I mean, my favorite thing with chefs and with musicians is just you get to meet someone that you think is really good at their craft and then just ask them whatever you want.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I just, kind of ask about the craft or about what interests them and they kind of, the answers write themselves. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the things that's been really wonderful about chatting with people up here, which is a little bit more access, a little bit more time, a little bit more long form, you do podcasts, all that shit. But the stuff that you learn about people, man. The people are very transparent. They really are, and they're very honest. They're very open. They're very passionate, especially in this industry. And I wonder what that moment was, because to me, you're a music guy for sure, but professionally, I think you're more in the food and booze culture.
Yeah, I mean, the last 5 years have really kind of that's been my lane in Austin, and so I've been doing. I was a food editor at Austinist for a while, and then when that started to wind down, then I took over at CultureMap, which is not that's a bit of a misnomer because I really consult for them more than anything else. They do their own content, but I write a couple columns a month for them and help them decide what to cover because it's such a it's so funny because I know sometimes people go, well, those things, they just crank out 200 words and things like that, but man, those guys are under incredible pressure, whether it's like them or Eater or whoever else. It's like, you gotta, you're contracted to write 5 pieces of content a day. Jeez. And, you've got 90 minutes to get an article grammatically correct and with an image and up on the internet with some links and have it be something that's actually of interest. And I mean, the pace is just breakneck. And, and that's why a lot of things are really short and linked to other things and whatever, because there are very few people paying for original journalism these days. Yeah. Most people are just like, cover breaking news and cover things that people are excited about happening. And so it's like Shake Shack's coming, or whatever else, And so those guys, man, they write. I mean, they're just cranking from 8 to 5:30 and trying to cover the news as it's going. And,
do you think that that's changed the face of journalism though? The hyper consumer kind of super saturation and just like eat compulsion, you know what I mean? Like data.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is, now, the thing that I write every month there is, every month it's some kind of a list. And they pay for that piece and everything else. And they want it to be a thoughtful list. And so, there's a food budget and, can go out and try some things, but they still, at the end of the day, you want like, hey, 8 business lunches in Austin or something. They want something that's has a soundbite on the front end of it. They don't want it to get too esoteric because they want it to be. I think what most mainstream media outlets are doing now is, well, we need service pieces. Yeah. So we need something that's like handy on a phone to do, and not that there isn't some long form things going, and the Statesman and to a certain extent the Chronicle still do sort of longer form things and stuff like that. But there are not a lot of people that have a long enough leash to do long form food journalism in Austin. And do you
think there's an audience for it though?
Yeah, I do. And I think who may end up doing it is Tribesa, because I know Katie Friel used to work at CultureMap, and she's the editor at Tribesa now, and I've seen her. She's mentioned to me several times. She's like, I think Austin needs it now. And she's like, I think the big development over the past couple of years has been that going from only having one food critic in town to having a few. Yeah. I think that's been a positive change.
Absolutely. Varied tastes is a great thing.
Yeah, well,
if it's the one that I'm thinking of, which I can't even recall her name, terrible tastes, And
I think the challenge is, a lot of people will be like, "Oh, you're a food critic," and I'm not. Yeah. I write about food, but I don't go review restaurants. And so, I certainly curate them because a lot of things get left out because I don't cover them because I don't like them. Yeah. But it's not going into something that I'm writing if it's not good, or if I don't feel like it has redeeming qualities. Right. But
so you play it pretty democratically, if that's the right word, diplomatically rather. That's like if something really, really bugs you and that is very under par, you're not gonna call attention to it. You'll just not talk about it.
Well, that would tend to be more of like something on social media to mention, or something where I would write a letter to like the owner or the manager and be like, man, this is
what
not...
What the fuck happened? Yeah.
Yeah, and I've definitely done that before. Because inevitably it happens when like we have a good experience and then I take my wife back for like an anniversary or Mother's Day or something and they like totally drop the ball and and I'm like I'm supposed to have this on lockdown, like why did this happen?
Right.
But yeah, service is still a big big issue in Austin. But I mean, but all of that to say, I mean, I think it's great, that like for a while we had Mike Sutter, and then there were some people just kind of writing puff pieces in different magazines and newspapers and stuff, and it was sort of just Sutter.
Sure.
And then when Sutter did the retirement package and they got Odom to come on, so it was just Odom for a little bit, but then now Austin Monthly has Jolene, and the Chronicle importantly has Brandon Watson. Who's very opinionated and a really fun writer. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you have a number of other people not necessarily doing reviews, but doing constructive criticism and doing more opinion in their restaurant writing.
Right.
And so I think we've got now a scene of, I don't know, 12 to 18 writers that are covering food pretty regularly in Austin.
Are you excited about? So there's an interesting dynamic, or rather dichotomy going on at the moment with Austin cuisine, in that there are a lot of concepts that are failing, and whether that's because of staffing. You talk about La Vie, you talk about Metal, just closed within the past couple of weeks, and then at the same time, lots of other highbrow concepts coming in to the fold. Do you think that Austin can take all of that? Do you think that the economy will actually support that?
Well, I think those three shutters that happened recently all happened for very specific reasons.
Sure.
Congress was absolutely because Second Barn Kitchen is a cash cow.
Sure. Great spot, too, man. It's so fun.
And so they essentially decided that Jason Stewart was going to do Boiler 9, and that David Bowie was going to expand that Second Barn Kitchen brand and do, a few of them around Austin, or maybe, I don't even know, they may go to other markets with it. Yeah. But those guys are developing a hotel on the east side, too. So I think they were basically
and in Marfa, too, right?
They were basically like, hey, Jason Stewart and Jason Stevens, take Boiler 9, and David Bull, you grow the cash cow, and let's, go out and make some money. And so I think that was kind of the thing.
And stuff, right? Like that all that stuff.
Yeah, so actually, Bar Congress is going to essentially move over into Boiler 9, I think, when they open, from what I know of it, that there'll still be a bar in that space, but Jason Stevens and that bar program are going to move into Boiler 9.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So that will, they won't disappear, but they're going to kind of move down the street.
Sure. Which is good. I mean, it's a great empire. That's a great Jason behind any bar empire is fucking going to be good,
But then with La Vie, they just they lost a lot of the key people that I think made that place great, and I just think that that was a struggle personnel wise to recover from that, and the Metal just never hit with the public.
It was the food's good, but the location was interesting, and it wasn't challenging, and there's parking and stuff, but it just no one knew about it. It felt like.
But I mean, it was inevitable that some of that was going to happen, because I mean, there are only so many expensive places that people can take, and I mean, we struggle with it because we're always trying to keep up with what's new, but you end up not going back to places you like, and I was reminded recently because we went to the opening of Central Standard, which is the new place in the South Congress Hotel.
Oh, okay.
Jesse Herman, who has La Condesa and Sway, he's kind of behind that. And I was like, man, I forgot how good all this guy's places are. That like he really knows what he's doing.
Yeah, Condesa's still it's a staple.
Like La Condesa is still a staple. Sway's like really good. And so I was like, we went there and we had had just like shrimp cocktail and like kind of basic things like pork chops. And I was like, this food is killer. Like I forget how good his places are because he hires like really talented folks. And, and so it's funny. You never get to as many places as you want to,
and then by the time sometimes you miss it, it's gone.
Yeah, or you miss like the high points or that kind of thing. But I mean, there's only so many dollars to be spent, and so I mean, there's going to be people are going to die off, and I mean, certainly it's like that in New York and San Francisco and everywhere else. And I just
think we hadn't seen it before, right? Because we're still in the early ages. Or the early dawn of our evolution culinarily in Austin, I think.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that actually because I had an idea for a panel at South by, and we submitted it through Food and Wine Alliance, and Miriam Parker's going to moderate it. But essentially, the idea is if you're a restaurateur, what do you do like from year 2 on? So like, how do you? So we called it like Days of the New or something like that. But like the idea
you
being,
love that band, don't you?
Yeah. Well, yes. No, I actually don't even know if I know what they sing.
It's not so pretty. It's not a pretty.
But it's so funny because like, you know, even if you're Lenoir, if you're whoever, you're not getting a lot of ink if you're Lenoir like in year 3. And so how do you make sure that you fill every spot? You know, I mean, because not every place can be in like the Statesman top 8 or whatever. And so I think that's the question that Austin now has to answer is how do you you know, sort of support mature restaurants that are good and have a steady hand.
Sure.
And so we're going to have Tyson Cole on that panel because obviously he's figured that out.
Absolutely figured it out.
And Andrew Wiseman from San Antonio who
the Sandbar.
Yeah, and like he had La Reve for a while,
yeah.
and El Sogno, and yeah. So he's you know he's been a mainstay there for a while. So it's funny. So we when Mary and I were kind of putting the panels together, we did that, and then we're also doing a drinking panel, which I'm moderating at South by this year, and it's about it's what we started talking about tonight, which is in the area of like Pappy Van Winkle and like what is it, Cascade Ales from Oregon costing $35 for a bomber and stuff.
Right.
How do you like drink really great craft product but at a reasonable price? And so that's the one I'm going to do that one with Emma Jansen from Imbibe and with Cosmos and with Michael from Austin Beer Works.
Oh, cool.
So,
very cool.
Be an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And like, you know, the 86 company, because Jason was on the show, I mean, that's not craft stuff. You know what I mean? Like, no, not to say it's not good because it's great, but it's like it's on this whole other level. You know, and Emma obviously has a lot of experience with the craft stuff, but it's you talk about whiskey specifically, man. Like, there's just the economies of scale that no one has really reached in the craft market yet. You know, can't even beat. You know, you think about Wild Turkey 101 bourbon, right? Get it for $18,
right?
Insanely delicious.
Yes,
$18 fucking. I mean, it's crazy.
That's what I'll buy when I can't find my Baby Saz or Weller 12.
Exactly.
Wild Turkey 101.
Yeah, it's incredible bourbon.
Works great in cocktails. So.
Yeah, and I almost find like when you add water to it, it's not as good. It's best like straight out of the bottle. Maybe a little bit of chilling, you know, but ultimately. But I think that's actually a perfect gateway into. We'll talk about spirits in a second, but you've picked every time, you know, I sit down and chat. The measure of protocol is that the guest picks a bottle, and you have picked the 2014 release of the Sazerac 18, second to last year, been a stainless vault that's been in existence for quite some time. 18 years old, not single barrel, it's a blend, but it's a straight rye whiskey, and this is at about 45%. What do you think? It's
lovely. Well, it's not here anymore, which should tell you a lot. But yeah, the balance of it, and it's so funny with so many of the older whiskeys, it kind of leans into that sweet, you know, treacly, and this is not that in any way, shape, or form.
Very dry still.
It's very dry, but it's super drinkable.
Oh yeah.
It's not. There's no burn. It's got a nice sort of warm spice to it. But
it's a different flavor of rye than Heaven Hill puts out, for example. Almost literally a different flavor, and it's tighter and kind of drier and very, very luscious, and I'm curious as to the batch that comes out in 16 if it will taste anywhere near this.
Well, I mean, and we may never know. It's so hard to find all those things, but it's lovely to try this stuff and you know, get a little taste of what the benchmarks are. And I always love to try and get a couple of pours from bars once a year.
Sure.
And just remind my palate what those things are, so that when you're tasting things against the standard bearers, that you know how they differ.
Yeah,
so.
It's pretty. There's rye is an interesting thing, and this handles it. Obviously, Buffalo Trace, which I love their stuff, but they handle it in a really impeccable way with the Saz 18.
You know, it's funny. I mean, my wife prefers rye to bourbon, and so we end up having rye around the house more often than we have bourbon, and I use rye in a lot of our cocktails.
It's classic.
Because she just likes the spice, you know, pepper punch. And
totally
stuff,
understand it. Yeah, I'm a bourbon guy because I'm a softie. I'm emotional, and there's something so sweet and just luscious and deep and compassionate about bourbon, you know. So I find myself flocking to that far more often, and I'll always stick up for that shit every single time. So when did you kind of make, because you're a beer guy and a spirits guy, you have covered us, and obviously I really appreciate the support, Tom, for what you've done for Genius and in the press and everything. But when did you kind of come to be that guy? Because it seems like you had the maybe talking about the Knicks and the Nets, like you had the sports background, then you kind of move into food a little bit, but you're not a food critic, self-proclaimed non-food critic. When did the rise and the evolution into beer and spirits kind of come about?
Well, I mean, I think I always followed craft beer, and so that was the thing I was sort of chasing before wine or before spirits. And then in 2003, 4, we went to Sonoma on a vacation, and my boss at the time was like, "That's the most expensive trip you'll ever take in your life." And he was absolutely right, because it changes your palate and makes you want more expensive stuff,
right?
And it makes you realize how they make things. And then I became a big wine nerd, and so I do collect a lot and have a cellar at home and stuff, and actually did Quartermaster Sommelier's level 1 last year to
very cool.
Kind of just learn more, and I think I'm about to start level 2. It's going to take like a year, so I'm like on the fence about whether I'm going to do it.
Will you still talk to me in a year? Because a lot of those guys, I mean, they're pretty.
They are. It's funny, they're serious about their craft, but most of them are so so smart, and like it's funny, you talk to somebody like Craig Collins, who at Elm, who he's a master sommelier and everything, but he's also a beer nerd, and he's also he also loves whiskey, and they do a lot of their more casual stuff at Easy Tiger, and they'll do Pappy flights.
But there is not a moment though where you don't know that Craig's a master somm.
Well,
not, in my
I think those guys. I mean, there's 200 of them in the world. I mean, you gotta. I think I too would wear that badge with a lot of pride.
Sure. There's 2 ways to play it, right? You can be like Jack Nicholson, right? And I love Jack Nicholson, but he doesn't want to have much to do with the common man, so to speak. But then you've got other people like David Bowie. You've got people like Tom Hanks, right? Where they're just like a man of the people, and no matter how talented and how one of a kind they are all about promulgating the message of education. And that is something that's really, really key. And I think that, do you feel like sommeliers and the wine community could, and I hate to even say this, but could benefit from some humility?
That's a tough question to answer, because I think that my experience has been that those people have always been really great to me when I've reached out and asked questions. And I would specifically think of like Paul Arrester and of like June Rodale and of Craig as people that I've asked a lot of questions about over the years about education and about hey, I need to learn about this type of wine. Are you guys doing any training to your staff? Can I stop by? Or that kind of thing. And they've always been really happy to help. I think some I think that some other people maybe haven't had the same experiences that I've had, but I've always had a great experience with the Austin Somm crowd. It's funny though. I mean, it definitely is its own kind of club, and it works apart. But if you think about it too, Austin Beer is its own club.
Oh,
and they have their own thing, and so it's interesting, and you have also a lot of hobbyists now, or that have become people who are kind of in the game. You have people. Somebody more mild like me, or someone who's taken a couple steps further, like Matt McGinnis, who actually has done a level 2 certification, and is a certified somm, and teaches occasionally or does seminars.
You guys are nice though. You guys are really nice. There are
a lot of nice people.
There in the world, Tom. There's absolutely lots of nice people. But I don't know that it's a crisis necessarily, but.
In the sommelier world in general I do see it kind of as a cliquey world sometimes, but I also some of the most amazing classes I've ever been to, like Guild of Sommeliers does seminars every couple months on like a Monday, and they charge $40 and put like $1,300 worth of Napa wine in front of you to sample. Not that you're having all 13, but
right.
If you were to go buy it, it would cost that much. And they do a 3-hour workshop so that you can like taste Napa, or you can taste like every country of Grenache or something.
It's amazing.
And they, education wise, like Austin is one of the top probably 5 or 6 places in the country because of the fact that we have several master somms here. They push education events to Austin rather than like San Antonio or Dallas.
Well, makes some
like
sense.
Yeah.
It's great. I'm not saying that there isn't a great culture for spirits, beer, and wine, because there is. And I've witnessed firsthand in talking to people, whether it was Paula, right, and hopefully Josh from Hops and Grain, he'll be on, and we can talk about it and get more immersed in the beer piece. But there is a community, and I really appreciate that. And it's evolved past the juvenile or the infant stages, right? We're really, really blowing up now.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and it's so funny to think about just where cocktails were here 5 years ago versus now. Because I mean, I've only been bartending at home for 3 or 4 years, maybe. I mean, maybe only 3. I don't know, but I just until Eastside Showroom kind of came along, I wasn't really paying a lot of attention. Or actually, I should take that back, because the first time I really was paying any attention to any cocktail I had was when we went to Fino, and it was Bill Norris behind the bar, Josh Loving, sommelier, Brian Stubbs, manager.
Right.
And they had, essentially
trifecta.
murderer's row of like smart dudes there,
Sure.
Working that place. And so that was kind of when I started noticing, oh, hey, maybe I'll have cocktails instead of wine.
Yeah.
And so it was like Bill first, and then when Bill left, we'd go and visit with Josh, and he was like very indulgent with us, and we'd be like, "Yo, well, here's why I'm spraying like pine in this glass," and all this kind of stuff. And so he was, so I would say Josh Loving and Bill Norris were like our kind of gateway people into that culture. And then we just got nerdy about it from there and started bartending a lot more at home and experimenting. And now my cabinet is exploding with Amari and bitters.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I have way too much stuff. But
what are you looking forward to next in the evolution of this whole thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think probably trying to do more pieces somewhere where there's reporting.
Yeah.
I had fun. We went up to Portland last fall for the Feast Festival and reported out a piece on what the Feast guys are going to be doing with Aaron Franklin and James Moody, which they have a festival coming sometime, I think late spring. That's going to be some sort of, they're being coy about it, but it's going to be something to do with like, some dudes grilling things and some rock music.
And I hope, I've been in some chats with them, and we'll see if we can not have a nice mezcal taco day or breakfast or whatever.
Well, that would be good. Well, they're all really great people, and I actually got to actually spend a little time with Aaron Franklin there in September, which was nice because we just kept bumping into him on the street in Portland because we're all going to the same places. We're like in the lobby at Ava Jeans, or we're at Poc Poc waiting for them to open or whatever, and so we had good chats. But I like reporting pieces out is fun. Like I also did the Texas Monthly 120 Tacos issue.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Okay,
we went and did. There were a couple of us working on Austin stuff because, of course, the Pat Sharp, the editor, lives in town, and Courtney Bond, who's one of the main food writers there, lives in Austin too. But we all went and destroyed several hundred tacos in Austin to get to the 12 or 14 that we chose, and that was a lot of fun. And
again, Tom, I just gotta stop you for a second. You got to live in London for a while. You got to see all those bands, the Britpop on the up and up. You got to travel the world with the woman that you love. You got to write, eat, facilitate a South by Southwest panel here coming up, and go to Feast and write about it, and eat a shit ton of tacos. Like, it's been a pretty good run. What do you say? It's
been a pretty good run, man. And somehow, real estate pays the bills, and I have a facility for that, thankfully. To indulge our other habits, and people seem to like and trust me in that field, and so this weekend we'll keep it going. So we're working on a piece for San Antonio Cocktail Conference this weekend, and may go down to Miami in February to check on Paul Key's new place in South Beach.
Oh, nice! That's amazing.
That's kind of what's next on the horizon, I guess.
Yeah. How do I get in on this? How do you like? Is it on Indeed? Is there a job opening that's like do this stuff that people want to do and eat and drink while doing it?
I think mostly it's a matter of just careful planning, thinking ahead, and pitching stories around things you want to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try and do that. And since lucky enough to have 4 or 5 places that I can pitch to, then just look for, hey, what's a good fit for this outlet? And you kind of have to think about, what do I read on that site? What do they like? What gets traffic for them? And then you kind of try and match your idea to the right venue, and then it tends to work out.
You gonna open a place at some point? Do you ever want to step across the line?
No.
You're rolling your eyes.
No,
no fucking way.
Not even a little. I mean, I have so much respect for you guys, your entrepreneurs who are doing your thing and trying to, kind of stake your part of, sort of staking the ground in Austin and finding your niche and your place here. I'm real risk averse, and I can't see myself doing it. I mean, investing in Jester King was essentially like the best we're going to do in that regard. And so, we're like, all right, so, we got a couple % of Jester King. So like, hey, we did something for the Austin food scene. But then, amazing. Working on Food and Wine Alliance is, I guess, another thing we kind of do for the food scene as well, trying to help bootstrappers like all of the hundreds of you guys that are making our whole food ecosystem and the products we're allowed to get and stuff here so much better.
It's good. It's a great place to be socially. It's a great place to be professionally in Austin. And the community is unlike any other. It's been amazing working with the Austin Food and Wine Alliance, knowing you, knowing Miriam, and some of the other great people involved there. And, just keep fucking doing it, Tom. It's a good gig, man. I mean, I'm really envious, and I'm so glad you were able to come in and we could share a rye whiskey, which doesn't happen all that often.
Oh, good.
Something that's nice too, And I just hope we can keep working together and keep working on things and making it exciting for everybody.
Well, absolutely. I really I enjoyed your new gin we got to sample on the way in tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
That looks like a raging value. So
I
wish you all the best
raging
with that.
value. I'm putting that in the label.
What is that? What's that going to cost at the store?
At the store, so we're not even playing the retail game.
Oh no,
this is for the industry. This is to enable people behind the bar and our distributor to be more profitable, because much like us, a small to medium level distiller, we have distributors that are of the same profile, small to medium level. They're not really able in terms of resources and funding to compete with Glazers or the Southern Glazers thing or Republic. So you know what? Let's start a little bit of a revolution, and let's try a different model, and let's try to enable them to be more profitable and move more product. Because you know what? People don't care about the well gins. They've never really taken it seriously. And I think and I hope that maybe with the new Highborn gin that we released, that this is the first play in a different model for small to medium level distillers. Instead of thinking about getting bought out all the time or making something they're going to charge $50, play it low, move volume, and see what happens. It's a different model. So we'll see how that goes.
Awesome.
Maybe we'll talk about it at South by Southwest this year. But anyway, man, thanks so much for stopping by. It's been a great chat with you, and when's the autobiography coming out?
Oh gosh, now I'm gonna wait for my children's autobiography, because I think my parents look at me and go like, oh my gosh, this guy gets to do all these cool things, and I look at them and they're like, speaking Spanish at 8 years old and asking when we're gonna travel to other countries and all this stuff. And,
right.
It's like, man, they're going to just level up from there.
Yeah. Well, it's been brilliant getting to know you and being envious of you. I won't get too envious because it turns dark real quick. I've seen some movies about it. What's in the box? Anyway, but thanks so much for chatting with me, Tom. Hopefully it won't be too much longer before we chat again.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, man. Well, there we have it. Another wonderful conversation, this time with Tom Thornton. Do you guys envy the David Bowie story? Seeing David Bowie in a small venue? I mean, Tom and I just chatted about this shortly after Mr. Bowie passed away, so it was very much at the forefront of our minds, and both of us were listening to a lot of Bowie thereafter. It's been great getting to know Tom and understand his story. Really wonderful checkered pedigree, quality academic background, and the guy writes really, really well. Do you remember The Austinist? My first exposure to Tom. Do you know CultureMap?
He's at the forefront of the food culture here in Austin and a massive music fan to boot. So this is the second interview of this wonderful South by Southwest 2016 week. First chatting with Marion Parker, who facilitated a great panel with Tyson Cole, I think Andrew Weissman as well, for South by Southwest Interactive South Bites. Now we got Tom, who facilitated a panel just this week with Emma Jansen of Imbibe and Jason Cosmas of the 86 Company about how to drink wisely in the craft boom. I think Tom and I drank very wisely, sipping the Sazerac 18. He's affirmed his place as one of the biggest and brightest in the city. So thanks everybody for listening to Show to V with Mike G. I hope you aren't getting too used to my sultry, sexy, provocative, sick-ass allergy voice. I think it will be gone by the next episode. But no matter which band you're waiting to see and standing in line for, which free beers you spill all over your sandals, please keep dancing.